Hello, Facebook and Instagram,
Hello.
and happy Wednesday.
Yeah,
We're here back here doing a live chat on spirituality. And
gonna talk about healing family lines
yes,
and why it's important to heal the family lines. And also, we're going to talk a bit about uh, how it's possible if we don't know our bloodline.
Mhm. I, for one, became quite obsessed with this last year. And I think the reason was mainly that I was seeing all kinds of patterns. I mean, we can, of course, inherit behavioral patterns through the family that we grow up with, but there were also patterns in my family that we couldn't explain, or I couldn't explain away like that. So I was really curious about what had happened to create uh, what I saw in front of me. And my family line is very complicated. My mom was adopted, and she never knew her father was American, an American soldier here in Iceland, in Keflavik base, and a base in Keflavik in the 50s. And she never knew him, and didn't know much about him, and or didn't know about him at all. And we didn't get any information about that family until a few years ago. She was always she knew about her maternal family, but it was complicated. So we didn't really dig into that because I think she didn't want to ask because didn't want to cause problems. I think that's something that adoptive kids struggle with a lot. They don't want to be a bother, not to their blood relatives and not to the parents, yeah, the adoptive family as well. So, and I think what inspired me to do this was when we went on our Highland trip through Iceland, and you were healing your family line,
Yeah,
in the
my
place
father's side,
from
yeah.
your father's side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where my father lived when he was a child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something that we have been actively doing for some time to look into our family lines, look into the patterns that we have inherited from the families, um, and to look into what we can change and what we can heal, because this is something that we are not very interested in passing on to our children and our grandchildren. So that is why we feel it's important, and also just for us to heal whatever we have come here to heal, because we can see patterns that have been going through the families through many, many, many generations.
And according to science, a trauma can be inherited through 7 generations. So we can be dealing with trauma from 7 generations ago.
Yeah.
And we are very disconnected from that trauma, but we can still be dealing with the consequences because that trauma changed the DNA of the person that was affected by the trauma.
And we do believe if we change the DNA with trauma, then we can heal it. If we change through trauma, and epigenetics can show that the change happens, that we can go back and we can heal and we can let go of this trauma that happened generations ago, and we can heal the patterns and also often the physical symptoms that come with trauma.
Yeah. And what I experienced when I started to, because when I was healing my family line, I'm not finished, is that I found this urge to just start digging. And I needed to know the people, to understand, to know where they live, to understand their family patterns. But of course, as when you go further away in time, it gets more and more difficult for you to find any information about your relatives. And it might be a bit easier here in Iceland because we have a genealogy database that could basically connect most of us together, or a lot of us. And we can access data through various outlets. But for example, with my American family, I had to rely a lot on both documents that I could get my hands on, and also just I had to rely a lot on my spirit guides and the intuitive guidance I was getting about each and every person I was looking into. And what I found so interesting was to be able to, I think maybe the best example is what I experienced when I became a mother. Because I experienced when I had my daughter, I experienced this overwhelming fear of not being able to connect with her, to not being able to love her. I was so scared that I would not be able to love her like she deserved, or that my heart was cold, or that I wouldn't be able to connect with her. And I had no logical reason to have these thoughts. But then I started digging, of course, first of all, my mom was adopted, and she stayed with her birth mom until she was 1 year old. And then she went into an orphanage and was adopted from there when I think she was around 18 months old. So she had this connection with her mother, and then she was adopted by a woman and a man. My grandfather, very loving. My grandmother had her issues. So she was always kept my mom at a distance. But then when I started again to crawl up the bloodline of my mom, my grandmother, or her blood mother, we say blood mother, do we say it in English? Birth mother? Mm-hmm. Yeah. She had 5 children, and she had to give them all away because she was battling addiction, and she just couldn't handle raising kids. So my mom was not the only sibling. So I can imagine that my grandmother had to close off her heart, because it couldn't have been easy to give away 5 children and feel that you couldn't take care of them because you were sick. And then I went one step further in the family line and looked at my great grandmother. She lost her husband when they were only around 30 years old, from 7 children, and my grandmother was the youngest, and she was 1 year old. She was the only one that my great grandmother was able to keep with her, because she didn't have the means to support her children. So they spread to different farms all over the countryside, and some of them went into farms where they were not treated very well. So she closed off, and she was never able to give my grandmother the love that she probably wanted, because she just shielded off her heart. And so then I understand, okay, this feeling is not my feeling. It's coming from my foremothers through the generations. And now I have the opportunity to heal it. Mm-hmm. And if I heal it for myself, then I can also heal the line backwards, so their souls can take in the healing as well.
Exactly. And this is what we need to do, because, and even though we know people, even though we know who our relatives are, then it still doesn't mean that we have all the history behind. We don't know the traumas that they have been through. And part of my work with just feeling safe and secure in the world was looking into my families. And it wasn't, even though I know a lot of the stories, then it didn't become obvious for me until I went through past life regression, and I was looking at my great grandparents on both sides. And I realized that they had so my grandparents had experienced huge loss, all of them, both my grandfathers and both my grandmothers.
Mm-hmm. They had financial loss.
Both financial loss, yes, losing their home. Mm-hmm. Or losing a parent. Mm-hmm. And then change, things change when you lose a parent, when you're a child, as you said, not that they would, had to go away, but still everything changes when you lose a parent. And this loss was with them, and this was causing insecurity that was passed on through the generations. Mm. And I can see the patterns around. This is something that I had to go through. And this is not something I would have read about, even though I read their story, because there is not usually emphasis on the trauma, but on different things, what they did and what they achieved in life. And this is so interesting for me to look into and just see the patterns, how they come from both sides sometimes, and how they can be repeated. And obviously then, through my parents and then on to me and my siblings.
And another, if we look to the question, is it possible to heal our family lines if we don't fully know our bloodlines? And I've been doing a lot of work regarding that because I've been studying ancestral healing. And so I've been going back in time through my American bloodline. And there I have to completely rely on my spirit guides and to rely on my intuition, because there's not much I can dig up. I can find birth and death certificates and marriage certificates and things like that, but not much more than that. And what has been the most interesting thing for me there is that I found some photos of my great grandmother. And instantly, when I saw her photo, I felt this deep heart connection with this woman that I never met, I never even knew of. And I could feel her so close to me. And I thought, okay, she's so ready for us to do this work right now. And she helped me go through the lines and point out the patterns that we needed to take care of. And because there was so much, for example, in my bloodline, it was a lot of poverty, a lot of abuse, a lot of addictive behaviors, alcoholism, substance abuse. And those are patterns that follow the bloodline all the way to Iceland, because we have been battling with that as well. So I think that it was so interesting to feel this amazing heart connection with somebody that I had never known. And going through the healing process with her, and she was calling in, when I was doing the ceremony, she was calling in all the other women. I think it was probably one of the most magical moments I've had in my life. And I know we're not finished, of course. I don't think we're ever finished like that, but I could just feel how the family line kind of calmed down, especially around the women, because the women were often those that were suffering, women and children, of course, because of the unhappiness and the abusive circumstances they were living in. And that was just really, really interesting to go through. So in my experience, it's not necessary that you know your bloodline, because you can do this intuitively. And I've used a stack of cards that's called The Secrets of the Ancestors.
Yeah, by Abiola Abrams.
Yeah, amazing deck of cards, and that it has a spread that helps you to do exactly this.
Yeah.
And so I use that, and some other kinds of things as well. But there are a lot of tools, and we don't need to know everything about our family. We just have to trust the process and trust the guidance as well.
Yeah, and to go through just looking at ourselves and what is coming from past lives, what is coming through the family line, and actively work through it, because the ancestors are there and usually willing to help us work through whatever comes up.
Yeah.
And we encourage everyone to look through their life and to look through the patterns that that have come from their parents and from the grandparents and so on, and see what work needs to be done, because we usually don't want to pass this on to our children or others. Even if we don't have children, we can still pass our the trauma that we accepted to bring with us on to others, because someone else will take over to carry it forward. And that's why it's important. That's why it's important to look through what our ancestors have been through. And they are there for us. We need to remember that they are always there for us to, work through this with us. They support us through the work. And a lot of what we've done is like you have done this through, and I have done as well through the cards, to map out, where we come from and so on. But also through healing work, through past life healing, to past life regression. And that is something that is also good to be aware of, that, as when we go through healing, then we are healing it backwards as well.
Yeah, we are, if our ancestors were walking on a dark road in their lifetime, when we heal that in our lifetime, we are lighting up their road as well. So we, because time does not exist, we are healing backwards and forwards and shedding light and love onto their lifetime as well. And so because healing works in every direction.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we all benefit from it. And that also raises the vibration of ourselves and of the earth and helps with the ascension.
So that's why it's important to heal our family lines.
Yes.
Please let us know if you have been working through healing your family line and how it's going, what you have been doing, and
share it with us.
We love hearing from you.
Subscribe to our channel on YouTube if you haven't done so yet, and please leave a comment if you have any questions or if there's anything you want to share with us about healing family lines. So until next, thank you.